They say trust is the foundation of every family. But what if one secret, one discovery, shatters everything you believed in? I'm talking about the kind of betrayal that makes your stomach drop. The kind that leaves you standing in the middle of your own life, looking around, wondering if anything was ever real. This isn't just a story. This is my reality. And let me tell you, nothing, absolutely nothing could have prepared me for what I uncovered. I remember the exact moment my world shifted. You know how people say they feel it in their gut when something's off? That nagging feeling you can't shake, like a whisper in the back of your mind telling you something isn't right? I had that for weeks, maybe even months. I ignored it. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was just tired, overthinking, being dramatic. But deep down, I knew. I just didn't want to know. And that's the cruel thing about the truth. It doesn't care if you're ready for it. It comes for you anyway. And when it hits, it destroys you. I was just a regular wife. A regular mom. I loved my family. I played my role. I did everything I was supposed to. Life wasn't perfect, but whose is? And then, one tiny moment, one seemingly insignificant thing, changed everything. I wasn't even looking for it. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious. It was just an accident. A twist of fate. One glance. One slip up. One moment where the universe said, "Here, take a look at the life you think you know." I wish I could go back. I wish I could unsee it. But once you see something, you can't unsee it. I'm telling you right now, this isn't some simple cheating story. It's not just a case of a lying husband or a broken marriage. No, this is deeper, darker, more personal. Because the person I caught, the person hiding a secret so twisted, so unimaginable, was someone I never would have suspected. And when the truth hit me, it felt like my heart had been ripped right out of my chest. I still remember standing there, frozen, unable to breathe, thinking, oh my God, this can't be real. This can't be happening. But it was happening. And it was just the beginning. Before I tell you what I found out, before I take you down this road with me, I need you to do one thing. Subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. Because what I'm about to reveal, it will change the way you look at trust forever. And trust me, this story, it's only getting started. You know, when you look back at your life, there are moments, tiny, almost forgettable moments, where, if you had paid just a little more attention, you might have seen it coming. But hindsight is cruel like that. It shows you all the signs you ignored, all the clues that were right there in front of you. And trust me, the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. Because if I had admitted what was happening in my own home, I would have had to face something I wasn't ready to face. That my family, the people I loved most, weren't who I thought they were. Let me take you back. To understand what happened, you need to understand us. I used to be happy. At least, I think I was. Maybe I just told myself I was. Either way, I did what I was supposed to do. I was a wife, a mother. I built a home, raised a child, and gave my husband everything I had. I met him young. We fell fast. He was charming, ambitious. The kind of man who walked into a room and owned it without even trying. I adored him. But somewhere along the way, things changed. Marriage has a funny way of doing that. You go in thinking it's about love, passion, partnership. But sometimes, over the years, it turns into something else entirely. Routine. Distance. Silence. At first, it was small things. He worked late more often. Stopped asking how my day was. Stopped noticing when I got my hair done or when I tried to look nice for him. Then it became bigger things. Missed dinners. Ignored phone calls. Conversations that felt like obligations rather than moments of connection. Eventually, it felt like we were just existing. Two people under the same roof, playing our roles, but not really seeing each other anymore. And that's when the loneliness set in. It's strange, feeling lonely when you're married. It's worse than being alone, because you have someone right there, but they feel a million miles away. And then, there was my son. He used to be my baby, my shadow. When he was little, he followed me everywhere. Held my hand, sat with me while I cooked, told me everything about his day. We were close. Closer than most mothers and sons. But then he grew up. And little by little, he started pulling away. At first, I thought it was normal. Kids grow up, they need their space. But with him, it felt different. It felt like he wasn't just growing up, he was disappearing. One day, I woke up and realized I barely knew him anymore. He stopped talking to me about his life. Started keeping his door locked. His phone was always face down, always buzzing with messages he never explained. There were nights he didn't come home. Days he barely said 2 words to me. And when I'd ask, "Is everything okay?" he'd just nod. Brush me off. I tried to tell myself it was normal. That he was just busy, that he had his own life. But in my gut, I knew. Something was wrong. And looking back now, I should have pushed harder. I should have asked more questions. Because if I had, maybe I would have seen what was coming. Maybe I could have stopped it. Maybe I wouldn't have ended up standing in the middle of my own home, staring at my son, my hands shaking, my heart breaking, asking myself a question I never in my life thought I'd have to ask. Who is this person? And worse, what has he done? But I didn't ask those questions then. Because I didn't know. Not yet. But I was about to find out. And when I did, it was already too late. I always thought that when your life changes forever, you'd feel it. Like a warning. A shift in the air. A moment where the universe holds its breath. But that's not how it happens. No, life doesn't give you a dramatic drumroll before it rips the ground out from under you. It happens in the smallest, quietest moments. The kind you don't even think twice about. Like a buzzing phone on a kitchen counter. That's how it started. It was late. The kind of late where the whole house was asleep, wrapped in that eerie silence that only exists in the dead of night. I was up, sitting at the dining table, nursing a lukewarm cup of tea, staring blankly at the wall. I had been doing that a lot lately, just sitting there, lost in my own thoughts, too restless to sleep, too drained to do anything else. And then I heard it. A faint vibration. At first, I ignored it. But then it buzzed again. And again. My son's phone. It was sitting right there on the counter. Face down. Something about that moment made me pause. Maybe it was the hour. Maybe it was the way my gut twisted, that quiet voice in the back of my mind whispering, "Look." I told myself I was being ridiculous. He was a grown man. He had a life, friends, a job. Of course, he'd get messages. But then, it buzzed again. And before I could stop myself, my eyes flicked to the screen. Just for a second. Just one glance. And that was all it took. A name. It wasn't a name I recognized. It wasn't one of his friends. Not a coworker. A woman's name. And below it, the words, "I can't believe we're doing this." My breath caught. For a moment, I told myself it was nothing. That I had just misread it. That it was something innocent. But deep inside, I knew better. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone. There was something secretive about it. Something forbidden. And just like that, the uneasiness I had been feeling for months shifted into something else entirely. Something colder. Something real. I pulled my gaze away. My heart was beating too fast. My hands felt clammy. I didn't know why I was reacting like this. He was an adult. He had every right to date. To have a girlfriend. But then why? Why did this feel wrong? I heard footsteps. His. I froze, my mind racing. I hadn't touched his phone. I hadn't done anything wrong. But as he stepped into the dimly lit kitchen, something in his face made my stomach twist even tighter. The way his eyes flicked to the counter immediately. The way his whole body tensed for just a second before he forced himself to relax. The way he reached for his phone too quickly, like he was afraid I had seen something. Like he was hiding something. I swallowed hard, pretending not to notice. "You're up late," I said, keeping my voice even. He didn't look at me. Yeah. Couldn't sleep. His fingers hovered over his phone, hesitating for a fraction of a second before flipping it over and shoving it into his pocket. I felt my breath hitch. I had seen it. That moment of hesitation. That flicker of guilt. I wanted to ask. I wanted to say, "Who was that?" But something in me held back. Maybe I was scared of the answer. So instead, I just nodded and watched as he grabbed a glass of water, his shoulders stiff, his movements tense. We stood there in that thick, suffocating silence, neither of us acknowledging the invisible wall that had suddenly risen between us. And in that moment, I knew. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. And I wasn't going to stop until I found out what it was. I should have let it go. I should have walked away from that kitchen, buried that moment deep inside me, and convinced myself that I was imagining things. But I couldn't, because once suspicion takes root, it doesn't just sit there quietly. It grows. It spreads. It takes over your mind, twisting everything, making you question even the things you thought were certain. And the worst part? It turns you into someone you don't even recognize. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over in my head. The way he hesitated. The way he grabbed his phone like it was a lifeline. The way he didn't meet my eyes. It was just a text. Just a name. Just a few words. Then why did it feel like my whole world was tilting? The next morning, I told myself I was overthinking. That I was being ridiculous. But the moment he walked into the kitchen, I knew I wasn't. He looked different. Not just tired. Not just distant. But guarded. Like he was bracing himself. Like he knew I had seen something I wasn't supposed to. And that's when I felt it. That shift. The one that happens when you realize that someone you love, someone you've known their entire life, is keeping a secret from you. And suddenly, every little thing starts to feel off. I started paying closer attention. Not because I wanted to catch him in something. Not because I was looking for trouble. But because I couldn't ignore it anymore. And the more I watched, the more I noticed. The late nights. The whispered phone calls. The way he flinched when his father spoke to him. And the locked door. That door had never been locked before. Not when he was a teenager. Not even when he was mad at us. But now? Now it was always locked. I stood outside his room once, my hand hovering over the doorknob, hesitating. What was I even doing? Was I seriously about to knock? What would I even say? Hey, I saw a weird text on your phone, and now I think you're hiding something from me? I couldn't. I wouldn't. Because the moment I asked, the moment I said it out loud, I knew there would be no going back. And maybe I wasn't ready for that. But the worst part? The part that kept me awake at night? Wasn't just the secrecy. It was the feeling creeping in my chest. This wasn't just about him. It was about me. Because this wasn't just uneasiness. It wasn't just a mother's instinct. It was something deeper. Something I couldn't even put into words. A feeling that made my stomach turn, my hands shake, my heart race. A feeling I shouldn't have had. A feeling I couldn't explain. And I hated myself for it. I started questioning everything. Why was this bothering me so much? Why did it feel so personal? Was it because I had already lost my husband in so many ways, and now I was losing my son too? Was it because I had spent years feeling invisible, and now even the one person I thought I could still hold on to was slipping through my fingers? Or was it something else? Something darker? Something I didn't even want to admit to myself? I should have confronted him. I should have demanded answers. But I didn't. Instead, I did the worst thing a person can do when they suspect a secret is being kept from them. I waited, and I watched, and I let it consume me, until there was nothing left but the truth. And by then, it was far, far too late. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't trying to find anything. But I did. And after that moment, nothing would ever be the same. It started with something innocent. I was cleaning his room. I know. He was a grown man, and I had no reason to be in there. But old habits die hard. I used to tidy up for him when he was younger, and that day I told myself I was just straightening up. That's all. Just dusting. Just folding a few shirts. Just being a mother. But then, I saw it. A box. Tucked away under his bed. It was small, wooden, locked with a flimsy latch. Nothing unusual, right? Except it was. Because I had never seen it before. And suddenly, my pulse was hammering. Suddenly, I knew. There was something inside that I wasn't supposed to see. I should have walked away. I should have respected his privacy. But the thing about suspicion? About fear? It makes you do things you never thought you'd do. My hands moved before my mind could stop them. The latch popped open easily. Almost too easily. Like it was waiting for me. Like the truth had been sitting there this whole time, just waiting to be found. And God help me, I wish I had never opened that box. The first thing I saw were letters. Handwritten. Pages and pages of inked words, folded neatly, pressed together like they were hiding from the light. My throat tightened. My hands shook as I picked one up. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe old letters. Maybe something from years ago. But then I started reading. And my blood turned to ice. I can't stop thinking about you. Every time we're together, I feel alive again. I know it's wrong, but I can't stay away. You make me feel things I haven't felt in years. Every sentence sliced through me like a blade. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't a harmless crush. This was intense. Secret. Forbidden. I could barely breathe. I shuffled through the letters frantically, my mind spinning, my vision blurring. And then I saw it. A printed email. One that didn't just talk about feelings. One that mentioned a place. A hotel. A date. A meeting. I gripped the paper so hard my knuckles turned white. It wasn't just words anymore. It was real. This was happening. And worst of all, I still didn't know who he was meeting. I dropped the letters. My whole body felt like it was on fire. Denial clawed at me, screaming for me to stop, to back away, to pretend I hadn't seen any of it. But I had. And now, the question that had been haunting me for weeks burned hotter than ever. Who? Who was he seeing? Who was he sneaking off to meet? Who was sending him those messages late at night? And why? Why did the answer terrify me so much? I shoved the letters back into the box, my hands fumbling, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. My son was having an affair. That much was clear. But with who? A coworker? A friend? Someone older? Someone he shouldn't be with? Or something worse? Something I couldn't bring myself to say out loud? The thought sent a wave of nausea through me. I staggered to my feet, gripping the edge of his bed to steady myself. I had to find out. I had to know. Because the way my stomach churned, the way my instincts screamed at me, told me that whatever this was, it was worse than anything I could have imagined. And I wasn't ready for the truth. Not even a little bit. I had to know. I had to see it with my own eyes. Because no matter how many letters I found, no matter how many whispered calls I overheard, no matter how much my gut screamed at me, there was still a part of me clinging to the last thread of hope. A part of me that needed to be wrong. A part of me that was begging to be wrong. Because if I wasn't, if what I was thinking was true, then my world wasn't just going to break. It was going to shatter. The night I followed him, it felt like my body wasn't even mine anymore. I was numb. For affairs. For things that weren't supposed to be seen. I pulled into a spot far enough away that I wouldn't be noticed. And then I waited. Minutes stretched on like hours. I could see his car, but I couldn't see him. Not yet. And then, movement. The driver's side door opened. And there he was. My son. My baby. Dressed too nicely for a casual night out. A nervous energy in his movements. A purpose in the way he walked. And then, another car pulled up. Right next to his. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I leaned forward, my breath fogging up the glass, my entire body frozen. The passenger door of the other car opened. A figure stepped out. And then I saw her. And my world stopped. It was her. My best friend. The woman I had shared my deepest secrets with. The woman who had sat across from me at countless coffee dates, laughing, listening, giving me advice. The woman who had been there for me when my marriage started falling apart. The woman who had held my hand while I cried over my husband's distance. Her. My chest tightened so hard I thought I was going to pass out. My vision blurred. My ears rang. I felt like I was drowning. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This was a knife, driven straight through my heart, twisting with every second that passed. They didn't even look around. They didn't check to see if anyone was watching. They were too comfortable. Too familiar. Like they had done this 100 times before. She smiled at him. reached out, touched his arm. And he let her. He leaned into it. And then, together, they disappeared into the hotel. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Because this wasn't just my son cheating. This wasn't just my best friend betraying me. This was both of them. Together. Hiding something so unthinkable, so impossible, that my mind refused to process it. But my heart? My heart knew. It had known all along. And now? Now there was no running from the truth. Because I had seen it. With my own eyes. And nothing would ever be the same again. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember turning the key in the ignition. I don't remember pulling out of that parking lot, leaving them behind as they disappeared into that hotel room. I don't remember the stoplights, the turns, the other cars on the road. All I remember is the silence. The deafening, suffocating silence that wrapped around me, thick and impenetrable, pressing against my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. It wasn't real silence. The world was still moving. Cars still rushed past. The radio still hummed softly in the background. But inside me, there was nothing. Just emptiness. When I finally pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. Not physically. Not in any way that anyone else would notice. But to me, it no longer felt like home. It felt like a stage. A carefully constructed illusion. A place where we all played our roles: husband, wife, son, friend. Except now, I knew the script was a lie. Now, I knew that beneath the surface, everything was rotting. I stepped inside. The air was thick, too still. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't take off my coat. I just stood there, frozen, my mind replaying what I had seen over and over, like a nightmare that refused to end. I didn't have to turn around. I already knew it was him. My son. My pulse pounded in my ears as I listened to him move around the house. Keys dropping onto the counter. A casual exhale. The sound of his shoes being kicked off. Just another night. Just another normal, ordinary night. Like he hadn't just been in a hotel room with the woman I had trusted more than anyone. Like he wasn't carrying the weight of a secret that could destroy me. I turned my head slightly. Just enough to see him from the corner of my eye. He was scrolling through his phone, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the screen. He didn't even notice me standing there. He was completely unbothered. And that was what broke me. Not just what he had done, but the fact that he wasn't haunted by it. That he could just walk in here, into the house I built, the life I gave him, without a flicker of guilt or hesitation. Like it meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. For a split second, I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab his phone, throw it against the wall, watch it shatter into 1,000 pieces just like he had shattered me. I wanted to grab his face, force him to look at me, and ask him, how could you do this? How could you betray me like this? How long? How long has this been going on? But I didn't. I couldn't. Because if I opened my mouth, I didn't trust what would come out. So instead, I turned away. And I walked upstairs. Not saying a word. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, the same thoughts circling like vultures in my mind. Should I confront him? Should I expose them? Should I tell my husband? What would he do? What would he say? Would he even care? And her, my so-called best friend, the woman who had been my confidant. Would she even pretend to be sorry? Or had she already decided I wasn't worth the truth? The next morning, my phone rang. I didn't need to look at the screen to know who it was. Her name flashed across the display, innocent, normal, like it always had. But now it felt dirty. I stared at it, my heart hammering, my fingers tightening around the device. I could answer. I could demand the truth. I could make her say it, admit it. Or I could pretend. Pretend I didn't know. Pretend everything was the same. Pretend I wasn't breaking inside. The phone kept ringing. Louder. More insistent. My hands trembled. And then I let it go to voicemail. Because I wasn't ready. Not yet. And my husband? The man who was supposed to know me better than anyone? He was clueless. Completely unaware of the storm brewing right under his nose. Sitting at the breakfast table, flipping through the newspaper, sipping his coffee like today was just another day. Like he hadn't already lost me. Like he had no idea that I was seconds away from burning this entire house to the ground. I sat down across from him, my body stiff, my mind numb. I stirred my coffee, staring at the swirling liquid, trying to find answers in the mess. Do I tell him? Do I keep it inside? Do I let this secret rot me from the inside out? I could feel the words sitting on my tongue, waiting, begging to be spoken. But they never came, because I knew the moment they did, there would be no going back. So I swallowed them down. And I took a sip of my coffee. And I pretended. For one more day. One more excruciating day. Have you ever felt like you were living in a body that wasn't your own? Like you were moving through the world, going through the motions, speaking, breathing, existing, but none of it felt real anymore? That was me. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a shell. A hollow, empty shell of the woman I used to be. And inside me, there was only one thing. A question. A single, unrelenting, merciless question. What do I do now? I spent the next few days trapped inside my own mind. Every conversation felt fake. Every moment felt like I was walking on glass, waiting for it to crack beneath my feet. I barely ate. I barely slept. I barely even breathed. Because every time I let myself stop, just for a second, that question came crawling back. What do I do now? Do I tell my husband? Do I sit him down, look him in the eyes, and say, the son you love, the boy you raised, the person you would do anything for, he's been sleeping with my best friend? Do I say those words out loud? Do I watch his face change, his world collapse the same way mine did? Do I take the match and light the fire that will burn this entire family to the ground? And if I do, what happens then? Or do I say nothing? Do I bury this secret so deep inside me that it never sees the light of day? Do I pretend I don't know? Do I keep living in this house, eating dinner at this table, passing my son in the hallway, pretending I don't see the lie written all over his face? Do I answer the phone when she calls? Do I keep smiling when my husband asks me if I'm okay? Do I keep existing in this life that I don't even recognize anymore? Or do I burn it all down? I looked at my son differently now. I studied him, watched him, listened to every word he said. Did he know I knew? Could he see it in my eyes? Did he see the way my hands trembled when I poured my coffee, the way my voice cracked when I spoke to him? Or did he think I was still blind? Still oblivious? Still his mother, the woman he once trusted, once loved, once respected? Because now I wasn't sure who we were to each other anymore. And maybe he wasn't either. And then there was her. Her name still sat on my phone. Unanswered calls. Unread messages. She was waiting for me. She knew something was wrong. She had to. But she hadn't stopped trying. Like she still thought she could talk her way out of this. Like she still thought she could lie to me, the same way she had been lying this whole time. And the worst part? She wasn't just my best friend. She was the only person I had left. The only one who had been there for me, listening, comforting, making me laugh when I thought I couldn't anymore. She had been my person. And now? She was the reason I couldn't sleep at night. I kept asking myself the same question over and over again. How did I not see this coming? Was I that blind? Was I that stupid? Or worse, had I just not been enough? Had I been so emotionally absent, so distant, so wrapped up in my own pain, that my son had gone looking for comfort elsewhere? Had I done this? Had I pushed him toward her? Or had this been inevitable? Had this been waiting for me all along? The weight of the secret pressed down on me, heavier with every passing second. Every breath I took felt like I was suffocating. I wasn't built for this. I wasn't meant to carry something this big, this ugly, this wrong. But if I told the truth, I wouldn't just be letting it go. I would be destroying everything in its path. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. I wasn't sure if I would ever be ready. So I did the only thing I could do. I sat there in the middle of my life, drowning in the weight of what I knew. And I asked myself, one last time, what do I do now? Because no matter what choice I made, nothing would ever be the same again. So now I turn to you. Because I don't have the answers. Because I have spent nights staring at the ceiling, running through every possibility, and I still don't know what the right thing to do is. So I have to ask, what would you do? Would you confront him? Would you look your own child in the eye and ask the question that could never be taken back? Would you expose her, the woman who was once your closest friend? Would you tell your husband? Or would you stay silent? Would you let this secret live inside you, eating away at you, poisoning every conversation, every glance, every moment that once felt normal? Would you pretend you never saw what you saw? Would you keep going like nothing happened? I want to know. I need to know. Because this isn't just my story. This is the kind of betrayal that destroys people. And I know I'm not the only one who's ever been here. So tell me, have you ever been betrayed by the people closest to you? Have you ever learned a truth you wished you could unsee? Have you ever felt the weight of a secret that wasn't yours to carry? Share your thoughts in the comments. Because maybe, just maybe, someone out there has an answer I don't. People always warn you about the ones who might hurt you. They tell you to watch out for strangers, for enemies, for the ones who stand on the outside, looking in. But they never warn you about the ones standing right next to you. The ones who know you best. The ones you trust the most. Because when betrayal comes, it doesn't always come from the person you suspect. Sometimes it comes from the people you love. The people you would have sworn would never hurt you. And when it happens, there is no coming back from it.